Hello, I'm Thomas, and this is the KAANP, the Knoxville Area Artists Networking Platform. And here we talk to artists about themselves, the art they make, and where they make it, kinda. So yeah, stick around, give us a listen. Enjoy the show. Is the bar sounds. We're in Hardin Valley Casual Pint. I hit the record button late, so I had to repeat that. So if you hear the hum of a beer cooler or bar patrons, understand that we are in public, and y'all are going to have to deal with it. So here we go. I'm here today with Garrett, and he does some really cool stuff. I'll let him introduce himself. Hello, Garrett.
Hi, my name's Garrett Durland. I grew up in Colorado. I went to university at Colorado State University and worked in the power and power industry for about 10 to 12 years. So now I'm doing art full time. So I really like it.
So what got you from Colorado to Tennessee to art full time?
So there was a job opening at ORNL, Oak Ridge National Lab, and I moved here. They moved me here, and I started working in the spallation neutron source, which is a scientific source of neutrons, and had a great time. Decided to quit after I was spending too much time on my side hobby, which was making bathroom signs. And I said, you know what? Let's see if this business works, and it's still working, so that's good.
Well, there you go. How long has that been?
It's been about 2 years since I quit the job, but I've been selling signs for about 3 or 4 years.
All right, so signage was really what pushed you over the edge to make sure this is a thing you wanted to do?
That's right.
Did you do anything before signage? Are you generally a creative person outside of your professional desires? How long have you been arting is generally how I like to ask this question.
So I was really starting to get excited about art in Denver when I discovered how easy it was to program LEDs. So programming is a big part of my art, I think. So programming LEDs as well as 3D printers to do artful things is one of my favorites. So I was creating sculptures with LEDs that would flash in certain patterns, different types of LEDs. But then I discovered 3D printing in about 2015 and got my first 3D printer, and here we are now.
You know, that's oddly similar to when I picked up the 3D printing bug, I suppose. I've got 2 printers. They're both FDM printers, and they're in my studio, which is like an 8x10 room in my house.
Yeah.
And I've been bitten by the bug, so to speak. And I used to work at Local Motors just up the hill over there, so I was exposed to some very high-level industrial 3D printing, and that really kicked off my interest in the creative aspect of it.
Sure.
So what do you do with your 3D printers?
So right now I spend most of the time on the clay 3D printer.
Yeah.
And it's a homemade printer that started as a plastic printer, and now it prints. You can change the nozzle size. Right now, a 4 millimeter nozzle that I can print 450 millimeters high, so almost half a meter high. So I'm excited about that.
So for scale, my printer at home has a 4/10 millimeter nozzle because I have a 1.75 filament machine, and that's 10 times bigger than the machine I have at home nozzle size. But you use clay ceramics, and is that a traditional ceramic material that you just feed through your printer, or is that something specialized?
It's the same thing. You just add a little more water to the clay.
Makes sense.
The one that I like has got some grog in it, which is it's been cooked once or been fired once. So little bits of grog in the clay with it. It helps it keep the form a little better. And I've been collaborating lately with Brian Wilkinson.
Yeah, he's another one. He's on my radar.
Yes.
Yeah, he's definitely on the radar. His traffic cones, and I think I saw the printed traffic cone that you all collaborated on,
That's right? Yeah.
and it had the wonky top, and I loved it because the style of machine that you have and 3D printing FDM in general, tall, skinny things is difficult.
It is, yeah, especially the top where it gets all wiggly. And so that was not intentional. You know, we were hoping for a straight top, but the fact that it came out that way was great.
Well, I don't think it would be a proper goon if it didn't have some squirrely characteristic to
That's
it,
right,
as per his work. So I was really excited to see that collaboration. I'm really excited to be here talking to you about this because I'm nerdy about the 3D stuff as well. So let's get back to this for a second. What mediums other than, did you ever do any like drawing, painting, any like traditional quote unquote artistic mediums?
I'd say it's all been 3D.
Every bit of it, all digital stuff?
I'd say so, yeah.
So no watercolors, no acrylics, no pens, pencils?
Nothing, yeah.
That's a really unique entrance into an artistic career. Most people, you know, that I've interviewed so far know in my life have some sort of traditional medium introduction, whether it be watercolor or pen and ink or you know anything you would be exposed to in a formal educational environment like that.
Right.
So you've been using your 3D printer since 2015.
Yeah.
When did the clay come in to the picture?
Let's see. I think when there was an Indiegogo, which did like a Kickstarter thing, and they offered a 3D printer kit for $150.
Was that the 3D Potter?
The Cerambot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. 3D Potter is the more expensive version that's owned by Roane State Community College.
No way.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
So yeah, they own the big 3D Potter, which is another half a meter size one.
Oh, that's crazy. I had no idea they were affiliated.
Oh yeah, Brian was the guy who applied for the funding and he built it himself.
Oh, okay.
So Brian was the guy behind that. So the cone was printed on that printer. So yeah, I got the Cerambot kit, which is a smaller size of clay that you can print.
Yeah.
Like 1/3 the size of my current printer. So I could print smaller pots. And I had a smaller kiln too. So I was printing smaller things.
Yeah, that's 1-to-1. You want to make big things, you have to have a large kiln
That's
too.
right. Yeah. So after my friend Nathaniel actually brought me a used kiln for free, which is great. And
sometimes you can get them that way.
Yeah.
When people want rid of them, they really want rid of them.
and Brian has the same experience. People give them to him because then they know he'll make use of them. So
yes.
I got some new filament. I mean, some new coils inside. It's like a filament. But yeah, I got some new coils in there and new switches and stuff. So I've got a big kiln now. And that's when I started to do the big stuff.
Yeah. And when you say big stuff, like what size is the big stuff?
I've tried to print, the full size of the printer that I have. So
max volume.
Yes, maximum. Yep.
And you said how tall it was, but repeat that for me.
Yeah,
please.
it's about half a meter or 450 millimeters.
Okay. And it's a Delta style printer, so
Yes.
it has a round cylindrical print volume.
Yep.
All right. Most FDM printers are square outside of the Delta format. So what made the Delta format really suit your needs?
The biggest reason is it doesn't move the print as you're printing a part. It stays put.
Yes, you're right. Because the print bed doesn't move, where it's triangulated, everything.
It's
the
very
head
important
moves in all directions.
that it stays put because if it moves left, the pot does move around. It's harder to keep the things stable enough so they don't fall over.
Yeah, that makes sense. A stationary bed is a big deal here.
Yeah.
So, do you remember the first thing you printed out of ceramic or out of clay?
You know what? One of my early inspirations was Taekyam Lee. He is a professor who does these geometrical prints, and it was like a strawberry pot, which has a bunch of spouts that you can put little strawberries in. So I was doing those like the first thing. So I was inspired.
So you were swinging for the fences right off the bat.
That's right. Yeah.
And you would see stuff like that for like what's the word, succulents and all that kind of thing.
Right,
That's normally
right.
what you'd see that in. Right. So you really just went 100 right off the bat.
And sometimes I look back, I'm like, man, I was really going for it.
That was very ambitious. Yeah. Well, if you're not really pushing it, are you? What are you doing?
Yeah, I actually went back to my earlier design, which is a hand that's like kind of crushing a globe of the Earth.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to make it 500% size. I tried.
So how big was it to begin with? Just like 6 inches or so?
About 200 millimeters tall,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry, everything's in millimeters.
Yeah, it's the metric imperial conflict in this conversation is going to be a funny one to listen
That's right,
to, I think.
yeah.
So was there a reason you couldn't make that happen at 500% scale? Would it just not support itself under the weight of
Yeah.
those materials?
I think if I had a 5 or 6 millimeter nozzle, that might help. I still had a 4 millimeter. And I could also put supports in. So that's internal supports that support from the inside.
Yeah.
I was just trying a one-layer print that would have one continuous layer all the way.
So the layman vase mode, pretty much for this piece.
I like to call it. There's another inspiration that Jonathan Keep. He calls it a computer-aided coil building. So that's what I'm doing.
That makes sense. There's a thing in glass blowing called coil potting.
Yeah.
Where you take a rod of glass, twist it into a coil, much like the ceramics you're talking about, and that's how you mix color in a certain workflow. You mix color like that.
Sure.
So it's very entertaining to see that workflow across different mediums. How are you pushing the boundaries for yourself right now in some way?
Yeah, because I do have a new kiln. I'm trying to think of that, but the infill is a big part of what I'm doing lately. Is like adding infill intentionally so it's exposed to the viewer.
So that's all these vessels are open, correct, on the top.
Well, yeah, only on the top. I've got some shell. Like for instance, I did a skull that has the bottom has the outside of the shell, but then the shell kind of falls away in increments. So you start seeing more and more of the infill as it goes up.
Yeah, I believe I saw that. You've posted a little bit about it.
Yeah.
You use it for a flower pot, right? Did you put a flower in there?
Well, you know what? Brian gave me an idea on that one.
Oh, did he?
He said he said there's 6 prominent holes at the top. There's a few more holes, but 6 that are big, and you could put beer bottles in there.
Oh no! Yeah. So you just be walking around with a head full of beer bottles?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
You know what? I like that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
The bottles would have to be like 3 times the size and height, but smaller in width.
Yeah, that. Anytime I see anatomy and put through that workflow and that material process, I really enjoy it. When you see educational tools like skulls, jawbones, anything anatomical for an educational setting that comes out of a 3D printer, I really enjoy. And I saw the skull and I was like, I put my hands on my face. I was like, look at it. So that was really neat to me, and I feel as if that is a really unique application for the material and the workflow.
Yeah.
And it's what's the word? It's relatable because everyone has a skull. It's
that's right.
very grounding.
Brian helped me with finding that inspiration too, because we had a face that we cut the forehead off, and you could see into the infill.
Yeah.
So then the next step is to try cutting more and more off and show that infill.
Was there ever we're going for this type of aesthetic goal, or is it just let's see how far we can push one aspect of this or the other?
Yeah, it's also programming, because if you don't program it accurately, it'll push the coils around where you don't want them to go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we want them to cut off cleanly and then go to the next spot and start cleanly.
So do you write all your own G code, or do you leave that up to your slicing software?
Like half and half. So
Okay.
the slicing is about half of the work, and the other is writing my own in Rhino Grasshopper.
All right. So 50-50 on your own custom G code, and is that for like retraction settings, layer starts and stops,
Usually with the
travel speeds, all that kind of thing?
well, with the Rhino, I don't have any of that. I just have one coil.
Oh, because it's that.
It's
okay,
it's
I gotcha.
a vase mode.
Yeah. So what do you tweak in that?
So layer height. When it starts, you change the speed of the print and the flow.
Yeah.
So those are the two main things. And you just change those and hope it doesn't collapse.
All right. So before we talk about the how things go wrong, can we talk about your inspirations? And that can be across any genre of art and life. Like who have you tried to glean from? Who inspires you in a way that just like really makes you want to get out there and do something?
Well, there's an artist called Kurt Hammerly. So I like what he does with his printer. He also uses his printers to make molds for all of his dinnerware and glassware.
Oh, so he makes ceramic, earthenware, glass, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
he makes mostly mugs, but also bowls and other things using the 3D printed molding method. So that's one inspiration. I had Taekyam Lee, Jonathan Keep, and now Brian has been a big influence on my work too.
He's Knoxville based, correct?
That's right.
Excellent. So is there any particular parts of these people's output that you really try to put into your output? Like, are there any direct inspirations into your work that you pull from theirs?
Oh yeah, for sure with Brian. But I also like to see what can be done, just pushing the edges,
Yeah.
trying to make so it doesn't collapse.
So, what's been the worst collapse? The one that just struck you, just the one where you just like threw your arms down, and cussed.
It's one of those ones where the print looks great and you're pulling off the printer just to go let it sit down for a while, and you jerk it and the whole thing falls over.
So do they normally collapse in on themselves, or do they slump over, or all the above?
Usually to one side or the other.
So it's never the implosion, just
just goes
a
blah.
lazy blah.
Yep.
Oh, and I can only imagine how what's the word I'm looking for? How sad that is, because you've waited for it to be done, and you've watched a little bit of it, or maybe a lot of it in my
Most
case.
of it, yeah.
and then you just like, yeah, time to go let it sit, and then
Exactly.
yeah. When my prints mess up, I like to say I've created expensive spaghetti.
That's right.
So, what is there an expression you have for your failed prints, and when your prints fail, what do they look like other than a
Sometimes
slumped over?
It might be worth saving a failed print, depending on how bad it's failed.
Well, is it easy to recycle your?
Oh yeah, that's the great thing with clay is you can just mash it up. You can either try to put more water in it or just put it in your reclaim pile, which can be watered or added water later. So yeah, it's really easy. But how do you determine when to use it? I don't know. Sometimes you can move it with your hands to try to reshape it.
Is that's a finesse part, right? Like you just know when you touch it, like we can use this.
Yeah, you can't wait a day and do that later. You have to do it right then, So you kind of get your hands wet so your hands don't stick to the clay, and don't push too hard. We could have it collapse again.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I'd say is that the most finesse part?
I guess so. Yeah. Well, another hard part is getting the print off the bat.
You use fishing line to peel it off of there?
Yeah, that's one way. I like to try to let it sit just to the right point where it's just dry enough. Then you can just lift it off.
Is that like a quick snap, or is it just a really slow
you
peel?
You kind of go left and right, That's you can feel it where it's sticking to.
A jostle?
Yeah, a little jostle there.
Excellent. I use fishing line a lot in my day job to remove badges and stuff off the car. So that loop and pull and sort of sawing motion, I'm very familiar with.
I'm sure, yeah.
That's it's probably one of my more tactile, enjoyable parts of my job when I get to remove badges. Yep. Then the worst part is I have to clean up the adhesive after that.
Oh yeah.
So and then you kiln fire these pieces, right?
Yeah, there's 2 kiln firings. It's a bisque kiln and then the final glaze fire. if I don't want to use glaze, then I'll just go for the final fire. But usually I like to put some kind of glaze on it.
Now, do you have any color preferences for your work? Any brand preferences for your glazes? Like, what do you like of that?
Yeah, I don't try to mix my own glazes, which is beyond my ability at the moment. But Amico, Coyote glazes, Mako, and the one that Muddy Mud has. Yeah, those are all good. I like mixing them up, putting like a darker color first and then a lighter color on top to see if it makes a different appearance.
I would imagine the layer orientation and how you
Number of
apply
coats,
it,
yeah.
and would create a good contrast between the different coats of glaze.
Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error. I should probably be making more test styles where I can test my pieces before I do a pot.
Yeah.
But I like to just kind of wing it and see what happens.
I mean, if you don't leave a little bit to chance, are you having less fun?
I'm having more fun.
Yeah. I will say, in my experience with printers, you walk out of the room and you walk in, you hope that things don't go awry. Have you ever opened the kiln and things just aren't right?
There's glaze that runs right onto the kiln shelf.
Just falls right off?
Yeah, it seems to fall off, Like sometimes it goes all the way around the piece and you have to use a hammer to get it off. That's
oh,
no
man.
fun.
So it really solidifies
It's really
on the
solid,
on
yeah.
the fire bricks in the kiln. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, those being porous, it doesn't help.
Yeah, Brian likes to use fire bricks. I just put my stuff right on the kiln shelf.
Okay. So that's the I guess the stock or factory stone in there.
Yep, you can buy shelves that are more durable than fire brick. Yeah.
Okay. That's the kiln area of this workflow is beyond my understanding because I don't ever work with those. That's really cool though. The color, are there glazes that change color after firing?
Oh, yeah, I'd say almost all of them do.
Almost all of them?
Well, to some degree. Some of them change drastically, like from white to red or something.
Okay, that's crazy. So that's like a striking color in Borasil in glasswork.
Yeah, so like I mentioned Kurt Hammerly, he has some great Instagram posts where he does before and after shots in his kiln. And some of the changes are just amazing,
That's crazy. I'll have to check that out. What other ways are you trying to push it right now? Are there any like one specific angle you're trying to perfect right now, or any task or workflow you're trying to get into?
Brian has encouraged me to make some plastic molds for clay.
Okay.
So I haven't done that yet. Where you can press the mold in using just wet clay and press it in with your hands, or you can make an entire mold for slip, which is like wet clay.
Now, is that a positive and a negative? Like you use the positive for the exterior and negative for the inside? Or?
Yeah, that's something I need to get into.
Okay.
You can do it either way.
All right. That's probably the angle I would take because making molds and some those types of applications and more tooling is something I'm a little more experienced with my workflow. I've made I've made resin casts as molds, to pour resin into for all kinds of various shapes. The only thing I haven't done is really made a mold specific for using with silicone.
Oh yeah.
I haven't made any molds to hold silicone to make positives for things, but when I find that need in my workflow, I will certainly do it.
That's right.
So can you walk us through your workflow? Do you have
Sure.
a specific workflow?
So in the morning, I wake up and make some signs, and while they're printing, I'll go to the Rhino, or sometimes I'll use Tinkercad or Fusion 360, and I'll come up with a new clay design. I'll try it out in the slicer, or I'll try it out in the usually it goes into a slicer so I can run through how each layer will come out.
Right.
And then it'll be sent through Google Drive to my other computer where I can load it up and print it out. But I've got my studio in the basement of my Airbnb, which is another property. So I go back and forth between my house and the Airbnb.
So you don't have your studio at home?
Nope.
Is that inconvenient?
Yeah, it's also messy. I can have the entire basement full of dust. Clay dust.
That's true. Yeah.
And
Then you go home.
And then you go home. There's no clay dust.
That sounds like a very convenient setup for keeping the house clean.
Yep.
You don't track the dust everywhere.
A little bit, yeah.
Well, obviously you can't escape it, so you come
Right.
home with a little bit.
That's right. Yeah.
Is there any do you have any, I need to turn on this song before I get ready to do my thing, or do you have any processes inside your workflow to feel comfortable or anything like that you like to, any groove you like to set for yourself while you're working?
I just try to just look at what other people have done on mostly Instagram, and sometimes I have the form in 3D, like a basic form that I can put embellishment on. But sometimes I'll say, oh, I need to change this a little bit or change that, and then it looks nothing like what I saw on Instagram. And I'll say, oh, time to start over.
when the expectations versus reality doesn't really match up.
Yeah, it's like I need to move this a little. I need to add that. Oh, no, it doesn't look anything like I had.
Scrap it, go again.
Yeah.
So do you say most of your workflow is okay, so let me ask this in a better way. How much of your workflow is on the computer and how much of your workflow is the robot doing the work?
Oh, wow. Well, it's mostly on the computer.
Yeah.
I can also play with other 3D prints while the robot's doing its thing.
Right.
Like I can pull things off of the bat or clean up edges and stuff while it's doing its thing. So yeah, it's mostly on the laptop or on the computer as well.
And then once you click send and print, you're watching, manicuring.
I'm listening.
Yeah. The funny noises that they make
Yes,
is a really
there are
good
some
indication
noises.
of things that go wrong.
Yep.
In the normal plastic filament sense, it's like a grinding noise or any stepper motor clash or if you hear a crack, like something came off the print bed and fell over.
Yep.
I've heard all of these things.
That happens.
So what noises in your application make terrible outcomes?
There's two clay delivery mechanisms on my printer.
Your microphone's sagging a little bit. Yeah, see,
So I've got two ways of making clay come out of the nozzle. One is the piston pump, which is driven by a gear, 30 to 1 ratio gear, and the other is an auger, which has it just spins all the time. So sometimes the auger gets hung up because it tries to start too quick, or I think it's starting too quick.
is that like an over torque situation?
Yeah, something like that. I need to get to the bottom of it. I think changing the acceleration settings has helped, but if I hear that noise where it goes, bzzz, I know that the
when
auger.
you hear teeth against each other.
Yeah, it just can't start. It just stalled. So if I hear that, I just run over to the printer.
I know there have been days where I'm sitting on my couch and the printer is down the hallway in the studio and I just hear tink and something has fallen over on the print bed or came loose and I just run through the house with my arms in the air. Ah, no.
Mm-hmm. So another way that I'd like to push the edge or push the boundaries is to kind of take Brian's advice, and once it's done printing, I need to find a way to do some more decoration, handwork, add a handle. I've already added handles. I'm getting pretty good at it, but I need to add like other spheres or squares or something like that to join things together. So that's probably before I do the mold making thing, I think I want to do some more hand-built stuff as well.
So you're going to use the printer to make the main vessel and you'll add some attachments.
Or maybe other 3D printed parts.
Right,
Yeah.
Because, you can put whatever on there.
That's right, yeah.
Now, is that could you print all these things at the same time and then pick one up and stick it on there? What would that look like? Because if you had to have the main vessel waiting and then this happen and then put it on
so
there.
I've printed some flat pieces. They're like only 2 layers thick, and had them say I pour water on them, say wet, and then I print the main vessel, and I've tried to slide those in there as it's printing.
Ah, okay. I see.
So been able to put it in there, kind of curve it around so I can actually curve it so it fits into an upper part of the print as it comes around.
Gotcha. So you're tailoring that physical piece to where it's at on the
right.
print while it's in process.
Correct.
Excellent. That's one of those scenarios where if you don't do it right the first time, it's kind of screwed, right?
Yeah. And it can crack too because it's getting dry.
At a different rate than
Yes.
the rest of the piece. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that's a handful.
Yep.
You really set yourself up to stay busy on that one.
That's right. You're gonna have to watch the whole thing. Yeah.
That's definitely a handful. I can't say I've ever attempted something like that. I have attempted like mechanical fittings and interlocking pieces. And,
Oh yeah.
Man, like, the tolerances you have to have and the patience, the patience and the tolerances are probably the worst part. Or I have least patience to do those.
So if you get impatient with the fitting stuff together, the cool thing is glaze can fit. It can melt stuff together.
Oh yeah.
So like putting a smaller part on top of a big vessel, and then you cover the whole thing in glaze. That'll melt it together, and you got a bigger part.
There you go. That's neat. Are there any shapes that are just straight up no-nos? This is going to fail every time. Like large overhangs are generally,
Oh, yeah.
no matter what, FDM printing is difficult.
Well, sometimes I look for overhangs that are extreme because they can actually droop down in clay.
Yeah, and I've seen you. It almost looks like crochet or some needlepoint, that kind
Sure,
of
yeah.
fabric work.
That's more of the grasshopper type of thing.
Okay.
But yeah, getting those overhangs that droop down is definitely one of I love doing that.
I happen to find that very aesthetically pleasing. So
Thank you.
yeah, keep on that.
Okay, will do.
That's good stuff in my book. And then you fire those, and they have all their own individual texture. It's unique to every piece.
Sure.
Like once it comes off the print bed, it becomes individual after that. Like,
That's right,
There's
yeah.
there's nothing that's ever going to be the same about another piece.
That's right.
Even if it's the same print file, same G code,
That's
same
right,
everything.
yeah.
I love that. Are there any disadvantages with this medium that you like to capitalize on?
To capitalize on
The disadvantage, like if there's something that wouldn't work elsewhere that you try to employ here because you think it'll work.
well, you can make stuff that lasts a long time.
Right.
With PLA, you can't even put it outside and expect it to last very long.
Yeah.
This will last for a long time. Right now, I'm just making some tiles, for like a tiled table, So, not very difficult to do, but it'll last a long time. I'd also like to try to put some concrete inside a wet print, actually, so you can use. You don't even have to fire it, so you can have a wet print, pour the concrete in, and once it's done, you just kind of pull the clay away, and you have something that's negative of what you've created.
And then the thermal reaction in the concrete as it sets, does it do anything to the clay, or you just peel the clay off after that?
What I've seen people do is, I'm sure it gets a little warm, but I don't think it really hurts the clay very
Right.
much. But I've never tried it, so that'll be another.
I mean, how hot is a kiln
Oh,
that you fire your stuff at?
2,300 degrees,
Well, I'm pretty sure the concrete doesn't get that hot.
No, it's maybe 100 or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe. So then all the sculpting is on the inside, and the outside of that vessel can be whatever.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so any support you needed or structure otherwise, you can just pretty much build that inside of a solid cylinder, and then you have the open space inside that
Sure.
to do whatever.
Yeah, you can put a bucket in there to make the center hollow.
Yeah.
So I'd like to try that too.
Man, that sounds like a ton of fun. You could really get some crazy sculptures like that. I like that idea a lot. And you could get just as much detail on the inside of that vessel as you could the outside.
That's
so
right.
It's untelling what you could produce that way. Mm-hmm. Plus, you get the added fun of another medium, another workflow.
Yep.
That truly becomes a mixed media experience at that point for the artist, not only the spectator as well, I guess.
I've actually tried it with PLA prints, and I've made a mold for concrete and put a bucket in the middle. But every time you do it, you have to put Vaseline on the outside.
Yeah.
And your hands are so messy.
Yeah, mold release shenanigans, I think no matter what kind of mold and what material you use is always a mess. Like
There's gonna
even
be
the good
mess.
sprays, they're messy.
Yeah.
Like you just sit here and rub your fingers together all day and they just slide.
Yeah.
Do you have any projects, sitting in the back of your brain right now that you're really trying to toy with before you commit some action?
Well, every time I see a 3D printed house, then yeah, of course
Right there with you.
I'm gonna want a printed house sometime.
Man, I'll tell you right now, if I could have a 3D printed underground home, I would be all for it. Because if you could print me a dome home, if a dome home could be printed and then covered with more earth, please give me that.
Okay.
I'll have it. That's dream stuff right there. Homeowner experience, like all underground, passive heating and cooling, solar water, like all that, like totally sustainable from the ground up. It's
Like
crazy.
an earth chip type of thing.
Almost, yeah. I mean, I don't need a greenhouse, but
Yeah.
I would definitely like to have some sort of, water filtration environment in that scenario. Definitely, I think that's important. But I've seen underground dome homes that are just, built into a hillside, and I was just like, this makes so much sense. Why do more people not do this?
Yeah. I started to look at how to 3D print in concrete, and it's really, you have to have a good mortar mixer.
Yeah, the
Something
consistency
that
is key.
It has to mix and has to pump it out through a pipe. And what I found that's available is like $16,000. So, like, oh man.
Yeah, the machines are out there. They're very expensive, and I think Icon is one doing it in the United States, and there's a German company that just printed the first government-approved residential structure in Germany. I'm all over this stuff. I really, really hope this technology takes off to become a quote-unquote normal thing.
I mean, I wish I could get into it like it's like Dogecoin when it was young. You know?
Yeah, right. I'm pretty sure that's at like 50 cents today.
Yeah, wow.
Crazy. I've seen. I follow a couple people on Instagram that do large scale. I think they call it terra printing because they use natural materials from the site to build the structures, and they've done stuff out in the desert, like parabolic structures that have a fire pit and stuff inside of them.
Yeah.
And I love it. I really do. Like, from large scale format, that's definitely the way to go for the future, I think, because if you're using on-site materials, and it's going to fit where you put it because it's going to be made out of the same stuff.
Well, moon dust is pretty good too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very, very, what do you call it? Very brittle, or not sharp. It's sharp grains,
Yeah.
Most of the sand we find around here has been blown around by the wind.
Yep.
Not on the moon, though.
And it's very fine as well. Like it's not. It's much finer than sand. When sand versus moon dust, you could really, if you were to look at one speck side by side, you would like, God bless. Where did this sand?
Why is it tearing up my hands?
It's crazy if you look at those two things under a microscope. And they've done they've made what. I'm trying to think. I feel like I've seen really small, compressed powder, impregnated things made out of moon dust as experiments by NASA or someone.
I'm sure,
I feel like I've seen that. And then, people talk about, 3D printing structures on Mars out of the Martian soil. I'm just like, oh my God, please, can we try that?
Yeah.
I don't see why not. If it works so well, here, why can it not work well there? We know the variables.
Yep.
It really, I think this technology, as far as 3D printing, whether it's SLA or FDM, and regardless of whether it's ceramic or plastics, the additive manufacturing is such a revolution in manufacturing technology in general. I'm a big fan to seeing every new space it becomes a profitable application. Mm-hmm. So it's really entertaining to see. This company, we're going to 3D print these, we're going to 3D print those. Porsche just started doing brake piston assemblies out of titanium and aluminum. So it's wild. And that's sintered metal powder.
Oh yeah.
And that's so neat. I love that stuff. Anytime you can get lasers involved, I'm here for it. Lasers are always good.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's it? I normally ask this question first, but I was so excited. So, what is it like for you being a creative person in East Tennessee right now, with the way the world and society is at the moment?
So, seriously, I really don't mind the pandemic, being alone all the time. I just wake up, mail out some signs, and go to my clay studio. But I'm sure that in the future I'm going to want to move somewhere else, try to get somewhere a little more urban, so where I can kind of, I don't know, collaborate with more people
Yeah.
and see what's going on in the art world.
Is there a specific place in mind for that goal?
I grew up in Denver,
Okay.
so I'm always thinking about Denver. But yeah, anywhere that's kind of wild, good outdoor community, Asheville maybe.
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time over there. It's a fun place to be.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Been to Denver once. Went there for my 28th birthday and had a great time. And went between there and Colorado Springs. And I went to the Red Rocks Canyon Open Space in Colorado Springs. I've lived in Tennessee my whole life. Never have I ever before then seen a rock that was the color of my hair.
Oh yeah, it is the color. That's right.
The clay dirt out here is really close, but that's not a rock.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, this is cool. And first time I'd ever looked east and saw flat land until the horizon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was standing on top of 11,000-foot mountain looking east, just in awe. It was wild. So I can imagine growing up there and being around that all the time was amazing.
Great, yeah.
Yeah. Groovy?
It's groovy.
Yes, it is groovy. I greatly enjoyed myself, so I do hope to get back. Goodness. What are there any inspirations outside of the clay ceramic environment that you really try to incorporate into your workflow?
So I was playing a game called Abduction.
Abduction?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's a successor to Myst. Myst, the old click and find your own adventure.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with that style of game, but not that one particularly.
Yeah. So there was some great artwork in the game. One was like an arch door that had two parts to it. So I kind of used that idea to make some pots, and I was able to upsize it in my new printer to like 3 times the size. So that was pretty cool. They kind of sagged a little bit, but soon they're in the kiln now, so hopefully they'll come out good.
So when you open up the kiln, it'll be Christmas or
Yes,
not.
it'll be Christmas. Yes.
Hopefully it's Christmas.
Yep.
That's always the hope. Like, is it going to be the way I put it in here? Yeah.
So yeah, architecture and the video games.
Okay. Well, and this is a conversation I've had with other guests. Video games and entertainment mediums are rich sources for inspiration, and I really enjoy it. I was speaking with Matt Shelton here on the show about Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah.
When that came out, he was really, I'm sure he's still playing it, but it hasn't been out that long. He was talking about a lot of the wardrobe design in that particular bit of media, and
Or lack of wardrobe.
yeah, and it's there's so much richness into building an environment like that people really feel immersed in, that if you just stop and look at it, you can find really unique things most of the time in a lot of different forms of media like that. And that was a big source of textile inspiration for him, because he does a lot of screen printing and stuff like that. So that was where he drew a lot of inspiration. And when I play a lot of video games, and I'd say right now, like the new it's not new, but Marvel Spider-Man, when it came out, like I got it a couple months ago, and like there's
Are you a PC gamer then?
No, I'm on PlayStation.
Okay.
I'm not a PC gamer. If I was, I would have some stupid overbuilt PC, because I'm just one of those guys that when I find a hobby, I just dive in, head first. And there are things I've not gotten into because I know how deep I would go to the rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, too much. Yeah.
Too much. But there are character designs in that game that just look so good. And I'm really appreciative of that extra work, no matter where you find it. Like, it didn't have to be that good, but it is.
It is. Yeah.
Just anytime something just like comes across out of nowhere, and it's like, oh man, that's awesome.
Did you get your hands on a PS5?
Not yet.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, not yet.
I'm not going to play no scalpers, but I do want one.
Yeah, I want one too, and I'm surely not paying $1,200 to get one.
Yeah.
I know it's worth $600, but it ain't worth 12.
Yeah.
And besides, my PS4 works great right now, so
Good.
I can't fuss. If I didn't have a Sony, I would have a PC. So that's how it is. Yeah, I have friends at PC Game, and they're great. And I have friends that stream, and they have a good time. But I'm not there.
Yeah.
That's just not what I do at the moment.
Okay.
I like it though, and getting really nerdy about how people build their PCs is great. Like,
Yeah, me too.
That's a whole other realm of creative output all by itself.
That's right.
And you know what? I need RGB lights on everything. Most of these people say
I can help you with that.
if I could make them sweet, cool. But I just don't like the normal color changing. Like, oh,
Sure,
look
yeah.
at it. It just cycles through the color wheel. Oh.
No, you won't have that if you let me work on it.
We'll talk. But, RGB lights are really big in PC setups right now. And bless a lot of people's hearts for overusing them.
That's right. That's right.
I don't feel shamed for that opinion one bit. Y'all can
That's right.
do that what you will. All my friends that build their PCs and put lights on everything, I give them hell. It's just what I do. But do you have a custom PC setup for your computing needs in this
Well, yeah,
genre
I
of
built
art?
mine about 5 years ago, so I need a new one now.
Oh, is it obsolete now?
Oh yeah.
I'm using a 11-year-old laptop to do everything.
Wow.
It works just fine,
Okay.
but it's definitely outdated.
Yeah, I didn't use the top of the line components when I first built it, so now I do need some better computer.
So, what kind of needs do you have out of a setup specifically for your workflow?
So Rhino has been running pretty slow on my computer, so that's a Rhino Grasshopper, and I think I need a good graphics card, even though I'm not playing games, and I need a fast CPU.
Yeah. I feel like the slicing software is lean heavy on the graphics card.
Oh, sure.
Just to make all those calculations for
Yeah.
the movements and such. Like I sit there and some slicers work faster than others, and it's really amazing which one does what at the time. So slicing softwares have come so far.
I like how different they are, too.
Yeah.
They're not all the same.
I've got on my computer. I have installed right now Pathio, Cura, Prussia. I think I have the Cura slicer. That's the normal one I use in
Me too.
Repetier Host, and then Skyforge, Skein, and Pronterface. I
Yes.
think, yeah. I have a few of them because they're all different, and they have different options for supports, infill, all this stuff. If you know what end game you're going for, you know what tool to pick if you're familiar. So that's a fun bit of software to play
I
with.
recently downloaded, I think it's called Raise 3D, and you can put an image you can emboss an image right in the slicer.
Oh, that's like is that velocity painting?
No.
Have you seen that?
I've seen that.
Okay.
But yeah, you can make height differences in the
Okay.
slicer based on
Nice.
the image.
And then, litho paints. I've only printed one successul litho paint in my entire 3D print.
Why?
I don't know. Every time I try and hit those buttons, it's just like, nah, man, nah.
Oh, there's a great site called, I don't know. It's one website you can go to, and it'll make the best litho
It just
paints.
spits out a G code for
Oh,
you.
yeah,
Oh
it's
man,
easy.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to find that. That being said, that's not a very common part of my printing workflow. So the one I did do successfully was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, like the classic head bust of Frankenstein, and I did it out of a glow-in-the-dark PLA.
Oh,
so it was
great.
really neat.
That's neat.
And I'm pretty okay with that being the only one I've successfully completed so far. It was a birthday present for a friend of mine that lives in California. But
I actually went to the Alien show. What's it called? The Knoxville Alien Show.
I don't know anything about this.
XCon, that's what it was, right?
Oh, yes, the actual convention for
yes.
extraterrestrials.
I had a booth there for my 3D printing, And I did a bunch of lithobanes. I did a bunch of aliens, all sorts of stuff. I had a great time too.
So, the first thing when you said aliens, I was like, H.R. Geiger, yes. But no, it's actual extraterrestrials.
Well,
I
I had a lithobane of Geiger, of course.
okay.
Of
Awesome.
of aliens, yeah.
I think it would be really hard to separate the two in the time.
Absolutely.
I'm sure a lot of people that were there enjoy good science fiction.
Yeah. There were some Star Wars guys there. There were some Ghostbusters for some reason.
Might as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, you would think that's more of a fanboy expo thing, but I guess not.
It was fun though.
Well, that's what matters.
Yeah.
How big was that? How many people do you think were there?
I'd say there was 2 large aisles left and right. So I'd say like 100 sellers there.
Okay, that's not small.
No, it's pretty
That's
big.
not small at all. Anytime you get 100 vendors at any one event, that's a good
That's
event.
good. Yeah.
Oh, man, and that was a good time?
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
I recommend it.
You met lots of interesting people, I'm sure.
Sure did. Yeah.
Great. So it was just polymer printing then?
Yeah.
When you were there with all
I
that
hadn't
stuff?
gotten into the clay yet.
Okay, so this was pre-clay stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where does the bleed over stop between those mediums?
There's no bleed.
There's none at all?
It doesn't start. Okay, so you can make clay molds with plastic.
Right.
You can use plastic as an armature. You can burn it away in the kiln if you want to.
Yeah.
Right? I wouldn't recommend using too much PLA in the kiln. It'll kind of burn or make marks in your kiln.
Right. Yeah, burning that out in the kiln would not be.
Yeah, not
you
not
don't want
so
to do
good.
mass amounts of that. I can understand how that would be a problem.
But yeah, there's so much overlap. It's great.
What have you integrated any of the PLA other than the molds into your workflow like that?
Let's see. Well, I've created the clay printer out of
Out of
plastic molds.
Yeah.
So I've broken a few parts as I was pushing the clay too hard. I've got like a collection of parts. I don't throw them away, so I can show you how many times I've tried already. But
And they just split amongst the layers because
yeah, sometimes
it's PLA.
sometimes it's in one spot, another spot. You know, always trying to zero in on making everything really strong.
Yeah, because that can be difficult. Layer orientation,
That's right.
shape, profile, wall
Yep.
thickness, all that
Infill,
stuff.
yeah,
There's 1,000 different variables that any one or combination of them could make it fail.
that's right.
So do you ever play with any layer orientation, or is it all horizontal layers stacked vertically?
Oh, I definitely do. ISO curves. So ISO
Okay.
curves mean the Z changes during a layer.
Okay,
So the Z height actually goes down and up during one layer.
so that like in the polymer end of that sphere, that's non-planar 3D printing.
Correct.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
I
that
can-
more effective for
Well,
ceramics?
yeah, it could, depending on your model,
Right.
it can make much more effective. I can only do it in Rhino, grasshopper.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a clay technique that I've been trying with. Like I've been doing a heart at an angle so it can kind of face you. But I've also done wavy vases with all the loops.
So I've seen some of your typography pieces with the vessel in the middle, the red drum piece with the heart, right? Is that one of them?
Yeah, there's some non-planar printing in there.
Yeah, and the surface of that heart, it comes up and then it tilts.
Yeah,
right.
that's
so
right, yeah.
so it is facing you in
Yes.
a way. Now is that? I like how technical this conversation is. They normally don't get this technical on the show. So now with your Delta printer, you've got 3 points of articulation on the arms, and then you've got a triangular platform that the nozzle's in, and that platform rides up and down those, and it tilts and it angles like that.
It doesn't tilt. Actually, it stays level the whole time.
It does stay level,
Yes,
so
yes.
so you're not tilting the nozzle
No,
at all to
not at
print
all,
on that
no.
angle. So how do you
But
get
could you
those
do
angles?
it? I'm sure you could do it.
If you wanted to get in some really tricky
Yeah,
programming, I
that'd
bet
be
you
tricky,
could.
yeah.
Because you with the triangulation of that,
Yeah.
the 3 arms move up and down on their own columns. You probably could do that.
I bet someone will come out with a new firmware that I could upload someday.
It seems possible. I'll say that.
Yeah,
If it's not, somebody tell me I'm wrong.
it's possible for sure.
So how do you achieve that with your workflow?
The non-player?
Yeah.
Oh, so you draw some curves in 3D, and you use a rotation, and you kind of tilt them, or you can make a curve that goes up and down like throughout the whole layer. So Rhino 3D is the one I used for that.
So is this more of a you're stacking layers that one side is thicker than the other, and you eventually
Yes.
build that curve?
Yes, so
Okay.
that could be a problem because one layer could be not enough clay, and the other could be too much clay. So sometimes I actually sit there and change the flow amount as it's going around. That's not the way to do it.
But I mean, that would give you a real-time idea of the
Yeah.
volume being printed, though.
Yeah, how much more do you need on the left versus the right?
Yeah.
You know?
And is that like layer starts here, goes around, increases volume, and then as it comes back around, it decreases volume back to the original amount?
And that's what I've been doing on the keyboard. Too much of that.
So you're sitting here hitting the up and down button,
Yes.
like
Oh my
adjusting the
gosh.
volume flow as it goes around the layer.
Yes.
That leaves you a lot of room for error, I
Yes,
imagine.
that's right.
Oh, man.
Sometimes I'll hit like 120%, but I add another zero, and then it goes.
Oh, no. And then that's when you get the problem with your auger, and it
Oh
won't
yeah,
stop
it
up,
just
yeah.
stops. Yeah.
And then you're 70% of the way through the print.
Yes, exactly.
It's terrible. I feel your pain.
Yeah, there's pain there.
I recently used TPU for the first time,
Oh yeah.
and I was prompted by a coworker to find a material that would work really great for some lawn dart fins.
Oh yeah.
I was like, something flexible, really stiff, might work for that. So we settled on some TPU, and that particular substance is really, really sensitive to temperature,
Oh, I'm sure.
and I had no idea.
Have you done a temperature tower before?
I have not.
Oh yeah. So you want to program something that'll print a tower with different temperatures as you go up.
I'm familiar with the torture tests and all the stuff,
Yes.
the parameters for those files, and I've just never sat down and be like, I really want to do one of those. But I would imagine it become very, very useful. Retraction test prints are really where I spend a lot of time.
Okay.
And especially with the TPU, because it likes to ooze, it expands a lot once
Yeah.
it becomes heated. So you'll start a layer, and all of a sudden there's a big blob on the side, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
all right, I hate that.
I hate that. Yeah.
I mean, if it's a style you're going for, something great, but it's generally not.
Usually not. Yeah.
But I can imagine how that would be useful in a workflow like yours,
Mm-hmm.
because you could create some really interesting visual textures that way.
Yeah.
But I feel like you use more profiles to create texture than you do,
Blips and blobs,
physical
yeah.
things like that. I've seen you use like opposing layer orientations to make different patterns on the surface.
Yeah, with the loops.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love doing that. So another thing that you were asking about, what's next? So
Yeah, what's next?
I want to teach other people how to do this.
Yeah.
Online. I don't want to. I want to have a bunch of people tune into a Zoom, but I want to be able to provide something to mail them in the mail.
Yeah.
So they'll provide me with the file that they've learned to do in the class, and I'll be able to print it out on the printer and bisque fire it, and then mail to them, and they can glaze it and have it completed somewhere else. So Brian and I have kind of been talking about doing this, and he's a great teacher for online, and I can provide all the technical details as well.
The brain trust.
Yes.
So, what is the online format? Not a whole lot of in-person thing, because most people's robots are at home and they don't like to travel with them, so it
Yeah.
works out.
And we're going to use my robot for the first try, but eventually we want people to try it on their own on
Right.
their robots.
Because you're not going to get the full experience without having your own machine.
Yeah, you should get some. It would be inspiring if I got something in the mail and I said, "Man, I created this with my file. Now
Yeah.
I'm gonna want to spend some money to buy a robot." And but it's only like $200 bucks to buy an Ender 3.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
yeah, especially if you catch them on sale.
Oh yeah, just pick one up.
They have crazy sales on them sometimes. Like, it's ridiculous. You can get a normal, well-operating 3D printer for under $300.
Oh, easily, yeah.
Crazy. That level of accessibility for people at home is great. I love it. If that weren't the case, I wouldn't have the outlets that I have to be the creative person that I am.
Would I rather have a PS5? Ooh, that's a tough choice.
I'm probably going to spend the same amount of time sitting staring at the thing as it's working.
Yeah, that's probably right.
One of my biggest problems is I will sit there and babysit a print. Oh, my God. I think everybody that has a 3D printer has this problem.
Absolutely.
It's like staring into a campfire or like the fireplace in your house. I don't know why, but that's definitely the case.
Well, it's looking at the stuff melt in front of you and solidify.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun.
It's I guess it's a constant transformation that is never the same twice. You're watching it. It's exactly like looking into a campfire.
So actually today, Brian and I completed assembling his Ender 3.
Yeah.
And he'd had it for a few months.
And he hadn't put it together yet?
I know.
How do you do that?
I don't want to throw shade on Brian, but...
Well, how do you do that? I put mine together as soon as I got it out of the box, the day it came in the mail.
But we worked together and we got it up and running, and it prints great. And I can see how you just want to watch it.
Definitely. It's. I hate to say it's mesmerizing because that word has a real impact in my opinion, but damn, it's fun, and I hate it because I'll just kick back in my office chair after I hit print and just sit there for the next 45 minutes. No, I got to make sure the first layers go down right.
Oh, yeah.
And then an hour later, I'm still sitting there. And it's like, oh, no, I was supposed to go start cooking dinner.
Yeah.
It's a mess. So other than the obvious differences, nozzle size, medium, what are some different mechanical things about the clay printers versus polymer printers?
Those two are really big.
Yeah.
But the difference is, I guess it's good to have be able to kind of get the bottom of the printer wet.
Yeah.
Without having it short out.
So no electronics down low or around the print bed.
Yeah, actually, the 3D Potter has some motors that are they're not touching the table, but they're a little bit above.
So it keeps it out of the water if there's water sitting.
So you need some water clearance there.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. I don't know. You always want to try to get bigger with the clay 3D printer.
Yeah.
Go a little bigger if you had a choice.
Yeah, I feel like that's also like a common notion with plastic printers too, because oh no, I don't want to print this thing in 3 pieces. What do I do?
Yeah.
Well, you get a bigger printer.
That's right.
I also think one of the biggest differences, just from a mechanical standpoint, is the method of which you deliver things to the nozzle. Like you said, you have an auger, or you have a piston, right? Instead of just like a normal brass toothed gear that
Correct.
pushes through a Bowden tube or a direct drive. That's a really serious mechanical difference in these machines.
True. So there's a couple different ways to deliver clay. One's just the piston.
Yeah.
That's the 3D Potter.
And that sits on top of the nozzle, right?
Yes,
and it travels with.
Or sorry, it stays still and the bottom moves around.
Yeah.
So just a piston can throw the clay around, or you can have a piston and an auger, or you can have an air compressor with an auger. So there's 3 choices there for clay.
Are they all pretty okay, or does one work better than the other?
If you have a air compressor, you need to have something that could possibly explode,
Yeah. yeah, compressed air.
So that's a little more dangerous. Not a lot more, but, for a beginner, you might not identify the danger,
Right.
With a gear-driven, you could run it past its limit point,
Yeah.
and it could explode itself. It wouldn't be explosive. It would just, crack,
Yeah, it would be damaging. No explosive things, like nothing catastrophic would happen other than a malfunction.
Exactly. So there's
Not going to have parts flying
there.
around the room.
Right, yeah. So there's 3 ways to make the clay come out, and I would recommend the piston with an auger. That way you can stop and start the print whenever you want.
So what's the orientation of the piston and auger? Is it a piston to an auger, auger to a piston? Like how do they play together?
You put the clay in a reservoir, which is like a clear pipe,
Yeah.
and then the piston pushes on the end of the reservoir, and it pushes it either through a tube or directly onto the print. I would say I'd like to recommend it goes to an auger next, so it could go directly to the auger. That's what I'm building one right now that goes right to the auger, and then the auger can start and stop the clay flow.
So would the auger be where you modulate your retraction more or less?
That's right.
Okay.
Well, both go back and forth together.
Right.
They're kind of linked together.
Okay. So are they moving one to one essentially?
Yes. Well, you can tell whatever ratio you want.
Right. If you're programming it, you
Yeah.
can do whatever. But ideally,
It'll move itself together. Yeah.
excellent. And there's so many different mechanical things happening to make that happen. So you have the piston, and that's electric, essentially, right?
Stepper motor.
Yeah. And then feeding the auger.
Another stepper motor.
How long? Would you call that a Bowden tube? What is?
There's two. Like the one I'm building doesn't have a Bowden tube, but the one I have right now working, it does have a Bowden tube.
So I feel as if Bowden tubes make things a little less efficient because of the travel, and you lose pressure,
have to push
volume
harder on the piston. So, like, I want my new machine to have no Bowden tube. You can also put a router on it, so you can make some routed parts, like routing metal, wood.
Yeah.
Brian recommended, what if you just routed plaster? A big hunk of plaster. You can make clay molds right in the plaster.
Yeah, you could. Wow.
Yeah.
So is that going to be mounted, on the nozzle at the bed?
You take the clay off, you put the router right on, and it's the same firmware.
Excellent. Because there's a lot of multi-use firmware out there nowadays for additive and subtractive methodologies. Hello. Yeah, I'm doing a podcast. Oh no, we are performing, but only for ourselves. No, it's fine. So this is of course. This is the KAAMP. This is the Knoxville Area Artist Networking Platform. Yeah, please take a seat. But short KAAMP. It's on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, all this stuff. My name's Thomas. I sit down and nice to meet you.
I'm Garrett.
Yes, this is Garrett. No, it's fine. We're in public. It happens. I sit down and interview people that are creative individuals in and around the Knoxville area, and Garrett is my guest today. He kindly agreed to meet me as a stranger here in public and talk about art.
Don't forget, it's also a creative person, too. Oh, 3D printing? So, yep, plastic and clay.
Yeah, that's a very popular one. Very, very popular. Oh, you're welcome. Like I said, I've got about 13 or 14 episodes out there right now. If you want to find us on Spotify, we're there, and I'd appreciate it if you listen.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's fine. Enjoy yourself. Yes. You're welcome. That's the first time that's happened.
All right.
But that's okay. I normally don't record in Casual Pint. Also, they don't sponsor us in any way, shape, or form. But if they wanted to, they could. I wouldn't tell them no.
That's right.
I did pay for this beer.
That's right. And mine, too.
So, yeah, thank you for meeting me, first of all, now that that's been interjected in the conversation. Thank you very much. But, yeah, we were talking about extrusion methods, right? That's where we were?
Yeah.
You said augers, pistons. Where were we?
Concrete printing.
Concrete printing, yeah, some of that.
So that uses pretty much the same thing. You got a mortar mover, or it's called a positive displacement pump.
Is it the auger?
It's kind of like an auger, but it actually has a different shape to it for the mortar.
Is that like it has cams and lobes on it to mix, or is it strictly to move material?
It's moving material.
Just strictly moving.
Yeah. So it's like a round auger. It's not like a sharp-edged auger.
Right.
It's more of a round one that moves a positive displacement, I guess. I don't know.
I feel like that's just longhand for saying it takes stuff from here to go to there.
Absolutely.
But engineer speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, technical
Other
stuff.
pumps, they kind of provide a pressure.
Yeah.
This was displacement.
This just moves. So it's
Yeah.
not like you said, it's not providing pressure or,
Well, it is, but it doesn't guarantee I'll provide this much pressure.
right. It's
Yeah.
not a quantified this pressure at
Yes.
this velocity, blah blah blah. So
Right.
it's more of a I'm going to flow this much in this amount of time.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, it's what, volume per 2nd? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it just volume per second, or is it cubed or anything like that? Anything
don't know.
fancy? All right, fine. That's as long as it's volume per second. I think my machine at home is set to 15 cubic centimeters.
A filament. Okay.
That is a PLA.
Okay.
Might be cubic millimeters per second. Now that I'm thinking about it. But what are the volumetric measurements for your output? Do you know?
For concrete?
No, for your clay.
Oh, you know what? I just think about how long it takes to print a whole 1.5
Right.
liters. You know.
And is that your hopper size, more or less?
1.5 liters. I'd say you could print the whole thing in about 4 hours.
And you have a pretty steady layer time, right? Like you
Yeah.
don't have a lot of drastic changes in your layer
No,
time
it stays
because
the same, yeah.
you're printing vessels that are generally a somewhat uniform shape.
Yeah. That's the skull one with all the infill.
Yeah.
It changes, but I'd say mostly are round vessels. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a lot like SLA printing, where you just have a standard layer time, no matter what.
Oh, yeah, because that's right. I've never used one, but yeah.
I haven't either, but I am familiar with. It's all UV, light reactive resin. So every layer takes the same amount of time because it's just one flash of light.
That's right, yeah.
I find that really entertaining.
It is.
It's a lot easier to judge that way because one of the worst aspects, I think, of polymer printing is the print time estimations.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that bugs the crap out of me.
Don't rely on that.
No. I usually just go double whatever the computer
Yeah,
says.
that's good.
and that's my general rule of thumb for print times. Oh, it says 4 hours?
8 hours.
Nah, that's a Saturday.
Yeah.
So is that 4 hours pretty consistent? Have you done any longer prints with your materials, or is that kind of the limit with what you're doing?
I usually break it up into like 3 prints over one syringe, so it doesn't always take 4 hours.
Right.
So could take overnight.
And the syringe is what you call, what I referenced as your hopper earlier,
Correct,
right?
like the
because it
hopper,
has the
yeah.
piston that pushes through.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
That
if
sounds way cooler.
I've tried porcelain in there, and it doesn't really stay overnight very long. It kind of, when you have a constant piston pushing on it, it loses a lot of water.
Oh, yeah, because it's under pressure.
The other types of clay, like a grog, B-mix clay, doesn't lose as much water, so that's good.
So if it's in a pressurized container like the syringe, if you were to go, hit pause and wait overnight, do you release any of that pressure? Do you just let it sit?
Oh yeah. First of all, the clay will shrink
Right.
overnight.
Because it loses water?
Loses water, yeah. And also the pressure from the piston will cause water to leak out. And I've got mine kind of at an angle, so it leaks toward the back.
Oh, yeah, so it just
It's
gravity
out.
keeps the water out of the way.
Now the 3D plotter has a different orientation, so when it leaks, it'll go downward. So that's good.
So does that keep the print surface wet, more or less?
Yeah, it'll keep the clay wet as it comes out. So that's
Okay.
that's a good improvement.
And does that help with layer adhesion at all?
Oh yeah.
Theoretically?
The wetter it is good, but it also doesn't help the collapse.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
There's the fine line of how much water is too much water, and then it falls over if there's
That's
too much. Oh, I've never thought about that, but yeah, it makes perfect sense. I'm sure that can be just ridiculous to the point of infuriating.
Or just go on the safe side and build something kind of vertical,
Right.
Yeah.
Not a lot of drastic change.
Right.
Do you end up printing things upside down often, or do you just normally do them right side up?
Like pulling a whole printer upside down?
No. Just printing the file upside down on your print bed. Like, does that ever come into play?
You know what? I've thought of doing some of that, but no, I just print it from the bottom up. You know. We got some neighbors next to us.
Yeah, they got some noisy neighbors. What's over there? Is that Don? What is it?
Don Julio.
Yeah, Don Julio, the Mexican restaurant. Who knows?
Yeah.
I've found in my applications there's some profiles of shapes that just do better upside down.
Oh yeah.
And
for supports and all that.
Yeah, and you kind of never know what it's going to be either. You just throw things on the print bed and see how they slice. And supports are almost like they're so bittersweet.
Have you ever seen they have kits now that take your Ender 3 and put it at a 45-degree angle, and then you can print things normally.
Yeah.
And then it'll actually wipe off the old print after it's done, so you can print it again.
Oh yeah, I've seen that, and the continuous printer mill stuff too on the conveyor belt.
That's another one.
I really want to see what those conveyor belts are made out of.
I've never tried one.
Because if the bed adhesion is spot on every time on this conveyor belt, what's this conveyor belt made out of? Is it textured? I have questions.
Yeah, me too.
Have you seen 5-axis in the way that the workpiece moves?
I've seen a little bit, but
yeah, I've seen that in printing, and there's a lot of it in industrial machining right now, and it's slowly bleeding over into the additive manufacturing.
I sure hope it becomes as cheap as an Ender 3.
Yeah, that would be nice, because then you don't have to program any non-planar stuff. The bed does all the work.
That's right.
So your print head only moves laterally and vertically, and then no other shenanigans. I love all the advancements in this desktop era of manufacturing. It's great.
Right.
The next thing I really want to get into, I want to get a CNC mill about the same size as my Ender 3, just to have some subtractive manufacturing tools to play with.
Make some aluminum parts.
Yeah. I mean, I would also, like Snapmaker has that 3-in-1 laser CNC and 3D printer.
I've looked at that, yeah.
Those are very nice machines.
I think Brian wants one.
I bet he does. I want one. They're pricey, but I think they're worth it if every single one of those units works just as good as one dedicated machine for that purpose.
Well, maybe a little less perfect, but yeah.
Right. That's the thing when you have a multi-use machine. Like, it's going to be 92% across all aspects, not 100% for one aspect.
Right.
But still, if it's as good as Snapmaker says it is, then cool. Y'all can send me one.
Please, yeah.
I'll gladly try it out. But yeah, laser engraving is something that I find really neat, and there are people in my artistic sphere that are really getting into it, and it makes me insanely jealous. I really want to try it. I have a gentleman that he's making a lot of living hinge boxed enclosures, and it's so neat. And you just open up the top, and they just fold open.
Yep.
No mechanical hardware, no nothing. It's just they've cut patterns into the wood, and it folds. It bends. It's great.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised every time I see something that should be hard, stiff, and flat make a curve.
Yep. Compliant engineering, right?
Yeah. And then there's also like thermoflex. This is a little bit removed from the topic of conversation, but thermodynamic materials where they have a physical memory, and then you apply heat, and then they fold up or fold out or assemble themselves in some way. That's crazy.
Haven't seen that with 3D printing, but yeah. Another technology.
There are polymers out there that do that.
Oh yeah, okay.
I don't know if there's any in a filament format yet.
Right.
And if you did, how would you program that memory? I don't know.
Someday there will be, I'm sure.
Give it time.
Yep.
Give it time. So, outside of things we've already touched on, is there anything that? Are you excited to get up in the morning and go do this every day because you don't know what's next?
Well, yeah, because first of all, I got to feed the cats every day.
I got to feed the cats.
They meow at me every morning.
Yeah, they do.
So I definitely want to get up, make them stop meowing, but then I get on the computer and it's fun to try something new every day. Do you ever
get creative block just from the sheer possibilities of what you're doing?
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, sometimes I'll go into a space where I see somebody doing something beyond my ability, and they'll say, "Man, I should just take a break," And I'll never be able to do that. But little by little.
It's I feel as if a lot of workflows build on themselves a lot because I've made jewelry with my 3D printer, and then the first time I was like, oh, I'm going to make something that I could call jewelry. Mm-hmm. Now I'm able to make things that people actually want to wear.
Good, yeah.
And it's it's the blank sheet of paper isn't always something to be scared of, but every now and again it'll get you.
Oh yeah,
it will get you. And I try when that happens just to do something anyway for the practice of doing something.
That's a good. I agree. I mean, you might find something that you didn't know you could do.
Yeah, and just there on the piece of paper, just all random because you just sat down to do something and you didn't know what. I mean, there are definitely days where I sit down to paint and I have my blacked out canvas and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. But I draw lines and grab a brush and go at it anyway.
A lot of times I'll start doing something and then I'll find a place where I lack the skills, so I'll Google it. I'll do a little Google search, and it's pretty easy to do, so I do it, and then I have a new ability.
All of a sudden, there's a new skill in the toolbox.
Yeah.
There's a new avenue for expression. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of an example of something I've done in that vein as of late. Mechanical fitment, like subtractive manufacturing. I've tried to engineer that into some of the things I've made on the printer. Trying to account for tolerances with the FDM as they can be wonky.
Yep.
But from my trials and errors, I think I've done okay. I've got pieces that fit really smoothly inside one another.
That's great.
And I'm pretty proud of that.
It's very everyone's difficult. Proud of it, yeah.
It's very difficult. Way more difficult than it sounded.
Uh-huh.
Because you're like, oh, yeah, you just do this and a kiss, and you account for this tolerance here and make sure your attachment's that so you don't have these blobs. And I go do all those things, and it still doesn't work. And then you tweak this and tweak that, and then it's like 3 weeks later you finally figure it out.
Yeah, that's about right.
It's that has definitely helped me, like figuring out tolerances and like just how tight I can push my machine. Mm-hmm. Like I've got a 4/10 nozzle on it right now. I had a 2/10 nozzle on it, and I was printing at 5/100ths of a layer height, just to see if I could. It's very small.
Yeah.
Just to see if I could do it in an effective manner. Of course, the print times were just stupid long, but I managed to make some very pleasing pieces because the execution was there. Not that they were spectacular amongst themselves, but technically, I was pleased with the outcome.
Sure.
I feel as if going big and going small in this format are equally difficult.
Oh yeah.
Just difficult in different ways. Mm-hmm. I've never had a print slump over.
Oh.
But I've definitely had some fall over, and like I said, expensive spaghetti.
Cracking spaghetti.
Yeah, and I've definitely had some that the raft or the skirt just didn't even happen because your bed level or your nozzle or something, it's just too close.
Wrong,
there's 1,000 different ways that can mess up.
Yep.
Do you have any are there any common mistakes in your workflow that you make you have to watch out for?
I've got 5 different plastic printers, and they all are different in terms of the nozzle.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I don't buy the most expensive parts. Sometimes it's 210 is the best temperature, and other times 230. Even 270. There's something wrong with that, but I just I haven't gotten around to fixing it yet. But each printer is different, and I share files between them, and I need to monitor that temperature for sure.
Yeah, that's bed heat.
Oh yeah,
bed temperature is always something that gets me.
Yeah, sometimes you have to kind of actually put your hand on the bed to see if it's hot enough.
Yeah, because
you know.
You know that the thermistor is measuring the temperature of the heating element and not the bed itself.
And
So
it might
sometimes,
be, might not be coupled to the bed, you know?
yeah, or the physical contact between the two for the heat transfer isn't as tight as
or
it
just
should
a
be.
loose wire, you know?
These darn machines, man, I tell
Yeah.
you, there's a lot to them. As simple as they are, like
Yep.
they keep you busy. They really, really do. So we're at an hour 24 right now. That's usually about as long as I care to endure listeners to. I usually ask, are there other people in the area or in general that you would like to hear in a format like this? One, because I want to know who you're into. And two, I want to know who else I should have on because I don't want to run out of guests. So who would you like to listen to in this format? Who are some local people that you would like to have me pick their brain? Other than Brian, because he's been mentioned already.
So there's actually a high school colleague of mine, alumni of mine.
Yeah.
I need to get in touch with her more, but her name is Jessie Vanderlaan.
Okay.
She's a print artist, and she had a show with Brian in the same studio.
Oh, okay.
So they shared the same studio last Friday, or maybe one month ago or so. And yeah, I'd like to hear what she's up to.
Yeah. Anybody else?
That's it.
All right, that works for me, man. One's better than none. Garrett, thank you very much for sitting down with me to have this conversation. This conversation was a bit more technical than I normally get, but
good.
we share a very niche interest on very different ends of this niche interest spectrum, and I was super happy to sit down and talk to you about this.
Likewise.
I think clay and ceramic 3D printing is amazing because it's so different from every other format of 3D printing. And I think the things people can make with their clay printers are absolutely wonderful and practical and unique in every single way. And I'm just happy this exists and I can talk to people that do it. So once again, thank you very much. And I'm going to play us out. What are your socials? Where can people find you? Tell us all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, my Instagram alias is Tinker and Print.
Tinker and Print. And that's all lowercase, no spaces, no hyphens,
That's
nothing
right.
crazy. And you've got, do you have like a centaur and with a
also
rainbow
got
tail or something?
Yeah,
What is
there's
it?
on Etsy, I have the shop called Sassy Centaur.
Okay. Is that your logo for a Sassy
Yes,
Centaur?
I made that logo, yeah.
Excellent. So Tinker and Print and Sassy Centaur on Etsy. That's where you can find this man's work. Go check it out. It's good stuff. I follow him on Instagram, and you should too. Thank you very much. And now I'll play us out. That was the show. I hope you enjoyed. All the relevant social media and website links will be in the episode description for the featured artist today. And if you yourself or know an artist that you would like to be or see on the platform, shoot me an email. It'll be listed somewhere on here. I'll try to make it plainly evident for you. But thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.